they give an attractive color. For instance,
Okay, to give an attractive color.
Yes. Vis-a-vis medication that is for children mainly. So like ORS, it may be given a certain color so that it can give an attraction to children. When they look at that, they may not even take it that they are taking a medication because that color is really attracting to them. But in the actual sense, you're administering a medication.
Okay, and flavoring agents? Flavoring agents, anyone?
Yes, madam.
What importance are they? Yes, who's speaking?
It's me, madam, Nicholas.
Nicholas. Okay, yes, Nicholas?
Yes,
okay, Nicholas,
just like McLaurin said about adding color, flavoring agents, they add flavor to a certain medication or product. Like let's say using the same example McLaurin gave of a certain medication that is meant maybe for children. Yes. So you may add some flavoring agents so that you improve the flavor and the palatability of that particular product. Yes, maybe to make it more attractive to children, and also, yes, to make it more attractive to children.
Okay, even to adults. It's not just children. Okay, all right, let's go to carriers. What are they? Carriers as excipients. Carriers.
Hello, madam. Let me just try maybe to try.
Yes,
just
Derek.
Maybe I can say carriers. We can say these are vehicles that, or maybe that carry the pharmaceutical ingredient into the site of action. For example, yes, they just carry the. It's like a vehicle carrying that the typical pharmaceutical ingredient to the site of action.
Okay,
yeah.
For example.
So that's why maybe I can just.
For example.
Example of the carrier.
Yes. Of natural origin.
Maybe, natural origin. No, I don't know, madam.
Okay, synthetic. How would it work? And which active component does it carry? Huh?
Madam.
Okay. So a lot of these, when you look at some carriers, you look at it especially for medicines that are not inhaled, or that will need maybe inhaling. So as carriers like essential oils, and mostly maybe we'll look at maybe volatile chemical compounds on the skin, which will need to be absorbed into the skin. You know, the skin has got a thick barrier, we've got the outside barrier, the epidermis, and then the endodermis, and all those layers of the skin. So a carrier is something that will need to get that pharmaceutical medicine or therapeutic active compound into the site of action, like you have already said. So ointment bases as well, they'll also act as a carrier, but then they add some stability to the therapeutic active compound. And then what about fibers? Any example, and what do fibers do as pharmaceutical aids or excipients? And for fibers, mostly they won't be, a lot of literature won't put fibers as an excipient, but as the pharmaceutical aid. But in mostly, again, you won't find the term pharmaceutical aid that the way we have explained it here. So fibers, how are they pharmaceutical aids? Anyone?
Madam.
Yes. Who's
I
talking?
think okay, I'm just giving it a try.
Yes.
I think it can be used as maybe surgical dressings. Yes.
Okay.
That's fine. Yes.
Okay, surgical dressing, for instance, yes. And an example in this of natural origin is cotton. Yes. Okay. So those are some of the examples of pharmaceutical aids that we can that we can talk about, and some of these we're going to look at them in details. So, for example, for these following slides, um, slide 3, 4, and 5, it's just looking at the examples in detail. Solvents, alcohols, water, and then carrier oils as well. For instance, you have avocado oils and then eucalyptus oils. Those are actually carriers of the actual essential oils that you may need for certain kinds of practice. For instance, aromatherapy. Okay, and then alcohols and water, you can make tinctures, and then you can make concoctions out of those solvents. Them themselves, they don't have any therapeutic activity, but then they are going to extract, they're going to be used in order for therapeutic active components to be extracted from natural products. And then other examples that we didn't look at are suspending agents. These will prevent cracking, caking. Okay, for instance, of natural origin is acacia, the acacia gum that can be used, agar that can be used, bentonite. This is a mineral, and then gelatin as well. You find that it doesn't have much of medicinal value, but then it is added as a suspending agent for suspensions. Okay, any example of suspensions, medicines that are made as suspensions? Anyone? Suspensions? Hello, do I have people on the forum?
The question again, madam.
Suspensions, any example of medicines or drugs that are in suspension form?
Metronidazole suspension and other antibiotics.
And some antibiotics. Okay, yeah. So what is used is suspending agents. Okay, in order to stop the caking or maybe the sedimentation of the therapeutically active ingredient. Preservatives, we have talked about this, will protect pharmaceutical preparations from chemical change or microbial action. Okay, so preservatives, they will protect your active component from bacterial attack or protected from spoiling. Emulsifying agents, more or less like the suspending agents, which is soluble, they will add the solubility of fat and then water to enable fat to be uniformly dispersed in water as an emulsion. So these are all pharmaceutical aids that can be used in the pharmaceutical industry. Emulsifying agents, for instance, Acacia, again, more or less like suspending agents, Agar, bentonite, and gelatin. And then we also have Tragacanth, which is a powdered exudate from Astragalus gamifer. So this is a gum tree, for instance, which and its related plants where you get a lot of emulsifying agents from of natural origin. Some more examples on this are disintegrants, which are used in tablet manufacturing to reduce the breakup, okay, and disintegrants, for instance, starch and then microcrystalline cellulose. So these are plants, like we know, and there are different kinds of starch, okay. We've got grain, rice starch, for instance, maize starch, for instance, flour starch, for instance. So there are different kinds of starches depending on how the tablet you want, how it's going to be used, and what kind of medicine you need it for. Antioxidants, we had mentioned about this. These are additives that can delay the oxidative acidity, the spoilage of a product, okay, for it to have a longer shelf life, for instance. And sources of these can be plant and food sources. So when we're talking about Antioxidants, mostly plants that have got a lot of color. They will have a lot of alkaloids, for instance, they'll have phenolic compounds. Most of the phenolic compounds are antioxidants as well. Then one other pharmaceutical aid that we looked at and that you mentioned were the coloring agents, which improve or mask the color of pharmaceutical products. This can be obtained from minerals, from plants and animals. For instance, cochineal. Now, this is an insect which gives a very, very deep red color. And then we've got beetroot. This is a plant. You get beetroot powder, carmine powder, paprika powder, oil resin, and saffron. All these give very distinct colors which have actually been synthesized in the lab, and then we've got those that are not natural and they are synthetic. And in these coloring agents, you will find that some foods and a lot of foods, you find that like for color, they'll tell you color sunset yellow, for instance. So now if you look at sunset yellow, that is the synthetic color. And most of those colors have been obtained or they've been produced as a result of the natural colors that can actually be obtained naturally. Now the thing with synthetic colors is those are just synthesized in the lab and they mimic the actual color, so they will have a diverse they have the diversity of colors, different kinds of colors that are closer to the natural coloring agents. And then flavoring agents also to improve or mask the taste of pharmaceutical products, like somebody was talking about drugs for children, because children, I mean, every one of us, we don't like drugs, because drugs are naturally, and we know that they are regularly bitter. They are not something that are pleasant to take, but then some flavor is added to it in order to mask that unpleasant taste and to make them a little bit more palatable. So for flavoring agents, we can have sweetening agents, for instance, honey and saccharin, or glycolizer, which are obtained from plants. Okay, so here we have natural coloring agents. We look at coloring agents, and in these coloring agents, we have different colors that can be obtained, like I earlier mentioned. Embellica is one of the plants which actually gives out a black color, and it reduces hyperpigmentation or freckles or spots. So now if you look at this and its use, you find that this is actually used a lot in cosmetics. Okay, and Embellica officinale is used in cosmetics and to reduce skin pigmentation. And then T. camellia sinensis is also used for coloring. Black or dark brown, that is to tint hair and skin. So you find the color for tea in cosmetics as well, and then hair products. Also beetroot and Beta vulgaris, purple reddish color, and you'll find that it's used a lot in dairy and meat products. For instance, if you look at some polonies and cooked sausages, pre-cooked sausages and everything. So that color is not a natural color of beef or meat or cold meat. That's just an added color. But again, this color is a synthesized that mimics the beetroot color, and then they make synthetic colors. Cinnamon and cassia, this gives almond brown color. Paprika, crimson red, turmeric, and then the list goes on and on. So these are the natural colors, of which we have a lot of synthetic colors. And the reason why there is this coloring is that to mask the natural and pleasant color that can be of the medicine and the drugs. So now I was talking about synthetic colors. So in synthetic colors, there are codes that have been used, okay? Coded and synthesized natural coloring and flavoring. So there are those that have actually been synthesized to mimic the natural colors. You will find that on a lot of uh, foods which are highly processed foods. You find that if you read on the box there, you will find preservatives that are written, and then coloring agents, maybe flavoring agents that are given, and those are coded. So in coding them, these are international accepted codes of these pharmaceutical aids or these coloring and flavoring agents. So if you just check on any box of highly processed food, even biscuits, you find that these there are some coloring agents and there are some flavoring agents that are used. Someone has got a question. Yes, Mark Lawrence, go ahead. Mark Lawrence, you had your hand raised up. You are muted. Can you unmute yourself? Unmute yourself. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, yes. Unmute, yes. You had your hand raised up.
Yes, yes. Well, I hope I'm not trying to get ahead of the lecture. I want to find out, seeing that according to the explanation and also what the slides are reading here, they're depicting that there are some spices, those that sometimes are also used in food, which are used as flavoring, as flavorants and also colorants. But then at the same time, we discourage certain medication to be taken with food that has got spices for fear of interaction. So how can we distinguish the two, or what justification can we give if we encountered such a clinical situation?
Okay. When we're talking about spices, spices have got a lot of chemical constituents, and then spices and herbs, and some of them will actually adversely interact negatively with the drug that somebody, or maybe a synthetic drug that somebody will be taking. So now, in countering that, how we are using spices and how we are using herbs, for instance, in coloring, we are extracting the color and putting it on the medicine, be it a natural medicine or a synthetic drug. So we are using these as a pharmaceutical aids. So as they are, remember the definition of pharmaceutical aids, they do not have any therapeutic activity, but they are used in order to advance the therapeutic activity of the chemical compounds that we may be talking about. So spices can be eaten as food to spice up the food, to make the food tasty and everything like that. But then in this case, we are looking at these pharmaceutical aids as being extracted and used in the pharmaceutical industry to enhance the um, the, pharmaceutical pharmacological effect of the drug. So I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, yes, it's clear. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so we're going to be disconnected very soon, and when we do, please just reconnect as soon as possible. So I was talking about these synthetic color codes. Okay, so you will find that on this most of the processed foods, you find a lot of these E20, E30, E this, E that. Okay, these apply to color, and then they also apply to flavor. Okay, and some of them actually apply to preservatives as well. So these are internationally recognized coding, and in some countries, some of these codes are not actually allowed because they've been found that these synthetic pharmaceutical aids or product aids are actually carcinogenic. Some of them are carcinogenic. Some of them actually cause the food to spoil quite easily. Okay, so I put few examples of what these color codes in and the name of the color of the pharmaceutical aid which represent that color. For instance, E140, this is a coloring agent for chlorophyll, and this gives a green pigment found in the leaves and stems of plants, can be synthesized. So this is synthesized, added to green vegetables to enhance their color. So you'll be surprised that some processed vegetables have actually added color to it. Okay, in added color to it. For instance, eating tomatoes, you find that there are some certain tomatoes on the shelf. They'll have a long shelf life. For instance, they'll just be 2 weeks, maybe 1 week to 2 weeks. The tomato is very, very red, looking very, very ripe, and yet it's not spoiling. It's defying the natural process of spoiling. Why? It's because of these things that are added to it. Vegetables, sometimes they'll stay on the shelf very green, they are not yellowing, they are not succumbing to the process of spoiling or decomposing. It is just green. These are the things that cause them to remain palatable, to show that they are palatable for a long time. But that's why you find that in a lot of places, you find that food is labeled organic. When it is organic, nothing has been added to enhance it, such that it will undergo the normal process of spoiling. And you find that this kind of food are actually expensive because very little additives, very little things have been added to them. If we look at E260, this is acetic acid, which can be obtained naturally from citrus foods, but also it can be synthesized in the lab, natural components of vinegar, but generally manufactured from wood, used as a preservative, acid, or color diluent. Okay, found in pickles, on sauces, and chutneys. Okay, so these are some of the examples of synthesized natural colors. More examples, maybe E162, bentonite beetroot red, and then E627 sodium guanylate. So all these are found in processed foods and foods that are kept for a very long time. Okay, so if we go ahead, examples of certain natural coloring agents, cochineal, I've talked about it, and chlorophyll, paprika, which can be obtained from sweet chilies, capsicum anum, and capsicum species is the chili, and then also capsicum species, you find red peppers, green peppers, all those peppers in there, but paprika is actually capsicum anum, it's a different species. As a spice and as an orange red food colorant, so paprika has got a turnover, estimated turnover 45,000 tons per annum, and it gives it a lot of money as a spice and also as a coloring agent to most of the foods. Okay, so the chemical constituent that is of high concentration in paprika is capsanthin, okay, and this can be easily isolated in the lab. The pigments present in paprika are a mixture of carotenoids in which capsanthin and just have a minute, and capsorubin dominate. So these are the two chemical compounds that are of high concentration in paprika. Okay, they are oil soluble, stable to heat and pH variation, but deteriorate in light. This information is very, very important to us because when we have these physicochemical properties, when we know these physicochemical properties, we know Okay, I think let's continue. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, yes. So let's continue from where we were. Now, yeah. All right. So I was talking about why it's quite important for us to know, to have some information. Okay. To have some information on the physicochemical properties of some of these natural products that we are looking at. Okay, so for instance, if we look at paprika, these are all soluble. Okay, so you see that for some of these spices like paprika, when you use oil on it, when you extract using oil, you're going to get the maximum benefit of the chemical compound that is of use. The capsaicin, you're going to actually extract it more when you use oil than when you use water. Okay. And then the other thing is it's heat stable. So you can actually heat it. You can actually extract and heat it. But then it varies it. pH variation. Also, you can actually use both acid and basic kind of extraction. And then one thing is it deteriorates in mind. So this is the problem that we can have when you look at traditional medicine, for instance, or just herbal medicine that is displayed outside there in plastic bottles on the sun. Okay, those are clear bottles on the sun, and you don't even know what is in there, and then you are exposing it to light. So, with even if it is something that is very is efficacious, but the way you store it and the way you display it matters, because we are seeing that paprika should not be in clear bottles. Why? Because it deteriorates in light. When light just goes through, it deteriorates. Remember what we're talking about, the antioxidants and then preservatives as well, then it begins to spoil. So it won't have the same strength of efficacy as it would one that is actually stored in a dark place. So this information is very, very important. So we'll go to flavoring agents. Flavorings are intense preparations which are added to foods and pharmaceutical preparations in order to give or enhance taste or smell. So taste and smell are of utmost importance here. Medicinal flavorings are mainly to disguise an unpleasant taste resulting from the active constituents of the medicine. And in this case, most of the active constituents will be alkaloids. Alkaloids are very bitter, they are very sour. Um, they've got a very sour and bitter taste. And then flavorings are used in small amounts and not intended to be consumed alone. So you find that most of these, like the definition of pharmaceutical aids, for instance, they are not supposed to have any physiological pharmacological effect, but it's just to enhance the palatability of what we are talking about. So here, they won't intend to be consumed alone as a flavoring. For instance, onion, a lot of times, yes, people can take maybe onion rings on their own and things like that. But this comes as part of a dish, right? You just want that onion and start eating it, unless you want to take it as a medicine, where you maybe boil it and then you drink the water and things like that. Okay, any questions this far? Any questions? Anyone? Okay, so we proceed. So let's look at types of food flavoring. The natural flavorings and then those that are synthetic. Of the synthetic, include artificial and nature identical flavorings are shown in the E codes of most of the coloring agents. So even flavor, they'll be coded those that are identified as natural. For instance, you find certain foods or certain medicines which will indicate that they've got a lemon flavor. Okay, most of those flavors, like lemon flavor, it's not that it's the actual natural lemon juice or the flavor that was obtained and added to that. Mostly those are synthetic, which are identical to those that can be found naturally. Natural flavoring agents are substances obtained from plant or animal raw materials. Okay, so here we have, for instance, vanillin. Okay, and vanillin we have synthetic, and then we also have vanillin, which can be obtained from the actual plant, and then can either be obtained by physical, microbiological, or enzymatic processing. Okay, so there are different ways of extracting this: microbiological, and then physical extraction as well, and then enzymatic processes where an assay is done, and then this flavoring agent is produced from a it's produced from a chemical synthesis or a chemical process. Okay, so examples of flavoring agents, spices, fruit juices, eggs can also be a flavoring agent, herbs, edible yeast, and then vegetable juice as well. So, I think McLaurin's was asking about how spices sometimes can have a negative effect, adverse reaction with the drug that someone may be taking. Yes, it can. That is why a lot of times we believe that herbal or natural is safer, but in some instances it may not be safe. But again, we have to realize that a lot of these, the chemical compounds are in very minute concentration compared to the actual drug which can be concentrated. Okay, so these pharmaceutical aids won't be in high concentration to the point where they alter the efficaciousness of the principal component. So examples of flavoring agents, spices, included, we've already mentioned fruit juices, eggs, herbs, edible yeast, and the saffron and oil of rose have no medicinal properties that used to flavor. For instance, lozenges, and the licorice extract is used to disguise taste of nauseous medicines. Wild cherry syrup in cough mixture. So these are natural products that have been actually used. Yes, great. Unmute yourself and ask. You have your hand up. Hello. Gray, you had your hand raised. Okay, so we continue. So yeah, examples. These are examples of flavoring agents. Okay, so here we are. Some of the flavoring natural products that we can have. So while a number have these flavoring properties, some of them can actually be used as medicinal as well on their own. Okay, they can have properties like aminotic properties. For instance, citrus peels, ginger, peppermint leaves, fennel, dill, coriander, caraway, cardamom, and nutmeg. These in food, like McLaurin had mentioned, there are certain medicines that will not go well with any of these, okay, because of the chemical constituents that that they have, okay. However, because of the minute concentration of these chemical compounds, they are good to eat for these kind of properties. Usually, it is advised that when you are taking maybe some kind of herbal medicines, so you take them apart from the conventional medicine that somebody can be taking. Because in the same way, there are certain medicines that you cannot take with food, others you need to take on an empty stomach. Why is that so? Because the food that you are eating actually has chemical compounds. It actually has minerals, it has starches, it has proteins, it has all these primary metabolites and secondary metabolites, which may actually have an effect on the medicine, which is the chemical compounds that you're actually taking to aggravate whatever problem that you may be taking that medicine for. Okay, so in the same way that we look at food, that's how some of these are really good as a lifestyle. For instance, peppermint um, leaves, mint leaves, these are a very, very, very good carminative tea. You are very tired, very stressed, just take mint leaves, dip them in hot water, and then drink. You will just feel how your body will just going to relax, all the muscles relax, and then the rest that is going to come because of this. So these are things that are a lifestyle that you can. Coriander, for instance, these are good spices. They enhance taste. They enhance the color to the food, but also the small, small amounts of minerals that they have, which are very, very good for our for metabolism to be upbeat. Okay, any questions? So if we look at chemicals that are associated with certain particular flavors, alipyrazine chemical is the one that is responsible for the flavor in roasted peanuts, for instance, and then methoxypyrazine for earthy vegetables. So these are vegetables which are maybe even dry vegetables, for instance. So that smell that comes out of it is as a result of these chemical compounds. And then green pepper, we have that long name there. Also, it's as a result of that chemical. And then acetyl-pyrazine, the popcorn, the smell that you have in popcorn. So you find that pyrazines have got different kinds of chemical compounds. There are different kinds of foods that give out these flavors as a result of these different chemicals in different forms. Aldehydes, the fruity green, also alcohols, the bitter medicinal. So the medicine, that the bitterness in the medicine is because of the alcohol, maybe as an excipient, if it's for tinctures, for instance, or maybe for as a preservative. Yes, the fruity smell that we have and the fruity flavor that we have in a lot of these products is because of esters. Ketones, also the butter and caramel, and then pyrazine, brown bent caramel taste as a result of um, these chemical compounds. Phenolics, medicinal, and the smoky smell and flavor. Terpenoids, the citrus and piney flavor in the food is as a result of these chemical compounds. So these chemical compounds can be attached to the flavor or to the smell and even the color that we may be looking at. So why is this important is when you're doing your extraction, for instance, or your evaluation of these natural products, these are some of the things that can come to mind to say here, what am I smelling? This is a fruity taste. Okay, there's some esterification here that is happening, or maybe there are some acidification here that is going on. Aldehydes are forming, and you see that maybe spoiling, when something is spoiling, you're going to know that when it's spoiling, how do the chemical, how do the chemicals change the smell, the look, and then also the taste. Okay, so we go to spices. What are they? These are sweet smelling, sharp tasting substances. So now in the study of spices, if you go in depth with studying spices, we are saying sweet smelling. and then sharp tasting substances. Okay, I was looking at what it is that makes red chili, red pepper hot. You know, what is it? Why is it hot? Capsicum, yes, we've got red pepper, green pepper, and then we've got chili pepper, hot chili, and then just mild chili. What is it that causes what we taste when we eat chili, for instance? Well, one, we've got these chemical compounds, the physicochemical properties of these compounds, but we also have receptors in the mouth. Okay, we have some receptors. For instance, the chili. When you eat chili, why does it feel hot? It's the same receptors that actually um, that actually feel the hot. If you take something hot, that senses that what you've taken is hot. Is the same receptors that actually sense the capsicum that is in chili and the concentration of it, such that all along the gut, from the mouth until it reaches the stomach, it will just be hot. It's because those sensors are alive to the chemical compounds that are in chili, in the same way they are alive to hot water or cold water or room temperature water. Okay, so spices are used for flavoring, coloring, or preserving foods. The word spice comes from a French word espice, which means appearance. So you will find that spices, as opposed to herbs, have got a lot of color. And this color says a lot about what they actually do and the chemical compounds that are actually inherent in these spices. Okay, so spices has been a big business. They've been there for a very, very long time, and India or Eastern Asia has been the land that is full and endowed with spices from ancient times. Today, there is a better scientifically validated knowledge of health benefits of spices. Okay, so there are lots of health benefits of spices. So that's just what we're going to say about spices. Let's go to sweetening agents. As an pharmaceutical aid, there are substances that sweeten food, beverages, and medications to add taste. They can either be natural or artificial, nutritive and non-nutritive. Nutritive and natural sweeteners include sucrose, fructose, and galactose, and a lot of these you're going to get from fruits, for instance, fructose and galactose, and then sucrose. We know the major source of sucrose. Most of yes, fruits we have sucrose actually, but as sucrose where it's commercially obtained from sugarcane, which is a grass plant, and then sorbitol as well, a polyhedric alcohol, which is also natural, and then steviocyde obtained from stevia. Okay, so these are the natural sweeteners. Any comment, any questions from the forum? Class, I need a breather. Hello?
Yes, madam, we are here.
Yes, McLaurin. Say something.
Something in form of a contribution or a question or what?
Whatever, a contribution or a question. We are talking about food. These are things that you use every day.
Uh-huh.
Hmm?
We could get you.
Yes. Who's talking now? Hello? Okay, so we go on. Sweetening agents. Okay, we've got sorbitol and steviocyde. Non-nutritive and artificial sweeteners include saccharin and aspartame. So in the European Union, it is codified as E951. So if you want to see exactly what sweetening agent has been added to your food, those are the E-codes that we have mentioned. So there are several, there are quite a number of codes. Okay, sucralose as well is it's not nutritive, but it's artificial sweetener. Okay, so you will find like saccharin a lot. They will say for those who are diabetic, you should not eat sucrose, sugar, but you can eat saccharin. These are not good and helpful as 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 well, especially if it's not nutritive. Comparison of sweetening agents: stevia, rhodiana, is an intense sweetener. Stevoside is more than 200 times sweeter than sucrose. And then constitution, diethyl glycoside, and then volatile oils, mainly nerolidol and caryophyllene. Flavonoids like quercetin, arginine, and ostrolamine. So now my question would be, if stevia is very sweet and the sweetness is so intense compared to sucrose, why isn't it the one that we use? Because I would imagine that a fraction of a teaspoon of stevia will be sweeter than 3 teaspoons, for instance, of sucrose. Anybody? What is your thought on that? Food for thought. Go and find out why we actually do not use stevia. Okay. Maybe we even have an answer in the next slide.
Madam,
Yes.
madam, sorry, what's the question again?
Stevia. I have mentioned that stevia, which is obtained from stevoside, is more sweeter than sucrose. Okay, you can imagine that maybe to sweeten your cup of tea, a mug of tea, you need maybe 2 to 3 teaspoons. But if stevia is 200 times sweeter, it will mean just a fraction, a small fraction would actually get my tea sweet. As much as 3 teaspoons or tablespoons. I don't know how much you put in your beverages. So now the question is, why is it that it's not that commercialized in order to be used? Okay, so let's go on to pharmacological indication. It's a sweetener, mild osmotic laxative, that is the stevoside. This is the plant. Okay, slightly hypoglycemic and hypertensive. Antibacterial properties, is indicated to ease constipation and a sugar substitute for diabetic. Okay, so you see, so those are the pharmacological indications of stevoside or stevia. Okay, so the question that I posed, why isn't this the one that we use more compared to sucrose? Okay. So the next sweetener, natural sweetener, is honey, and we all know honey, and I'm sure most of us use honey and prefer it to sugar, to sucrose. It is a viscous and sweet secretion stored in the honeycomb by various species of bees. Okay, so there are different kinds of bees that are actually at the center of honey production. So here I've just written a small explanation of how honey is made. So this is for your reading. So just read, and then any other information that you may need on how honey is made. Okay, so what is important here? With the passage of time, water evaporates by producing honey. About 80% is the sugar and 20% of water. So the composition of honey is that it's got with sugar. As soon as the cell is filled up completely, the bees give it with wax to preserve it for off-season use. You'll be interested to know that honey is the only food that does not spoil. It can stay for a very, very long time without spoiling, without undergoing oxidation, without becoming rancid. Why? Because of the composition of the chemical compounds, okay, that it has. But again, depending on the bees that make it, depending on the pollen that make it, the tree and the environment in which it is, we've got different types of honey. We've got yellow honey, we've got red honey, we've got black honey, we've got white honey. Now, depending on the materials for which the bees bring together to make this honey. Hence, you will find that with all that, it's not a one size fits all for honey, that any kind of honey will have this kind of pharmacological effect or therapeutic properties. Some honeys don't have as much therapeutic properties as other honeys because of the composition. But we know that it has sugar and it has water. Properties of honey: it has an appearance of pale yellow to reddish brown viscous fluid. It has a pleasant and characteristic odor. It has a sweet, slightly acrid taste. However, taste and odor depends on the flowers from which nectar is obtained. Okay, gravity of about 1.37 to 1.57 total ash. That is when it burns, it will produce ash of 1 to 0.8%. It's a very, very good product. So you find that, so some of these are quality assurance control tests that you can actually do in order to validate your honey. Some honeys and a lot of it are actually adulterated with maybe sucrose or just different kinds of sugars in order to make it heavier, maybe to because honey is quite expensive, but then they'll adulterate it with other things, and then you purchase it, use it thinking that you are using pure honey, and get it to pure honey. Okay, so that is about honey. So chemical constraints for moisture ranges. So these are some of the things that you need to be looking at when you're actually evaluating the purity of the honey that you are using. Coloring pigments, vitamins, enzymes, invertase, diastates, emulsions, and then has small amounts of essential oils, beeswax, pollen grains, formic acid, acetic acid, succinic acid. So it's a whole food on its own. It's got a lot of chemical constituents that are very, very useful for metabolic activities. So the uses of honey. So uses of honey: adulterants mostly with artificial invert sugar or cane sugar syrup, and then it is used as a sweetening agent in confectionaries. It is used as a demulcent. It helps, that is, to relieve dryness, and so used for coughs, colds, and constipation. Because of its simple sugar content, it is accepted as a good source of nutrients for infants, elderly persons, and convalescing patients. It has also been used in open wound surgery, as it prevents infection and promotes healing. So because of the chemical constituents of honey, it's been used in all these. Okay, it's been used in all these, and in hospitals, some actually use honey properly on open wounds. Important ingredient in cosmetic products: alternative medicine. It's also being used for the treatment of all those things laid out there. Okay, so you can imagine that it's a super food or a super sweetener, because it can be used for, it's been indicated as being used because of the chemical constituents. The biological activity as a demulcent is with it, where to stop the dryness, mild laxative, bactericidal, sedative, antiseptic. Vermicide activity used as medium in preservation of the formula. So with all that, it is a food, or it is a drug, a natural product, if you lab that cannot be synthesized in the lab. With all that, honey cannot be produced in the lab, which is a good thing because it is a natural product. So the chemical constraint, the combination of chemical constraints is of utmost importance there, and the natural chemical compounds that make it. So we look at the nectar, we look at the pollen, we look at the bees, and then the honeycomb itself, the wax. All those combinations make what honey be honey. Okay, any questions about honey? I think we're going to end there today. Class, any questions? Okay. Yes, Florence, you can speak.
Okay, madam. This question is also just a general one, which I encountered at church. There are people that encourage use of honey, but then some people are actually saying that honey is not also safer. Sugar, the processed sugar is even safer than honey. So which between the two is more appropriate?
Processed sugar is better than honey. In what way?
Like for people who, let me just say the usual use of sugar in our domestic food processes and so on and so forth. Somebody was saying that honey is also not safe because of the same way it contains a lot of pollens and these other things that accumulate from various sources, which are added together. They may not be very safe in the body.
Safe, they are very safe because if you look at it, one striking thing about honey, it's got a lot of monosaccharides, okay, and very little disaccharides. Sugar is disaccharide, sucrose, okay. So with the sucrose is 100% sucrose additive, but honey has got a lot of monosaccharides which are easily absorbed into the system. Other than that, I'd mentioned that of all the foods, honey is one of the foods, is the only food that does not spoil. So it's got antibacterial activity, it's got some antifungal activity, unless you have stored it in a container or in a place which is not properly sterilized, then it can spoil. But all things being equal, in very sterile condition, honey will not spoil. It will stay for years without spoiling. And because of those physicochemical properties of honey, it is able to actually do many more things that sugar cannot do. Okay, you realize that especially for cancer and maybe just other illnesses, sugar is actually discouraged. The sucrose is discouraged because a lot of maybe fungus, for instance, even bacteria thrive on sucrose as a medium, but they cannot thrive, they do not thrive on honey as a medium. So between honey and sucrose, honey is better off a sweetener, unless people are reactive to some of the honey components. Yes, there are some people who actually react negatively to honey. It's not always a friendly product again. There are some people who actually react, who are going to develop some sensitivity against these chemical compounds that honey has. So we cannot say that it is a one size fits all. And I'm always saying for the herbal medicine, for natural products, don't assume that they are one size fits all. They are not. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, madam.
All right. Okay. So I think we are going to end here. So I don't know whether this slide is there on Moodle. I'm going to upload it on Moodle. Okay. And then just read through, and then we will take it up from there next week. So next week we are going to have Dr. Mungo, who's going to take you in Unit 5.1, the pesticides of natural origin. Okay. All right. I think that's the end of the lecture. Have a good weekend and see you
Thank you, madam.
week. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay. All
madam.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.